right. Well, we are live on Facebook, but let's go ahead and get into it. So, welcome everyone. This is the first of a series that I'm really excited about. I call it the Leading Ladies series. And I think it's important to talk about what women are doing that maybe aren't necessarily in a spotlight, but sometimes we're quietly doing big things in our worlds. And I think it's inspirational to know that and to hear different stories. And some things will be relatable, and some things will just be kind of inspiring and different. And I think that that's important. This being Women's History Month, especially, I think this is important. I know that certain cultures and groups of people are kind of feeling a little minimized right now. And so my hope is that we can remain kind of valid and in the front of things. And I know this sounds negative, but my thought has always been if you have a month or a day when you're recognized, then what's going on the rest of the year? And so we're in one of those marginalized groups that has a special day or month. And I think that it can be more of a year-round process if we just are continuing to connect and support each other. So why Tiffany? Why Tiffany? Let me go back in time and just explain how I came across Miss Tiffany. So many moons ago, I worked for Wilbert Funeral Services, and I was in charge of the South Texas territory. And Tiffany was in my territory, and she was managing a location in Seguin. And I got to pop in and see her, and I crossed paths with her as well at Texas Funeral Director Association functions. And so we would see each other there, and I was able to kind of meet and talk with her, and it was very pleasant. And so in doing that, I've kept in touch with her, and she was one of those people that always impressed me with kind of how she carried herself. Much like Lisa that's in this room. There's a special way, and you'll notice this when you interact with certain people. And it's more than just confidence. It's more than just a quiet confidence, but they kind of command their energy in a way when they're in a room, when they're interacting. And I thought that was really admirable. And I was like, wow, she's a classy lady. She would be in the midst of like a conversation, and it could be about a person, and she wouldn't say anything ill of a person. Like, she carried herself in a way that was just very respectable. And it was when people were or weren't looking. And I thought that was really impressive. And over time, we kept in touch while I was in Germany. And I saw that she went into her own business, and we continued to cross paths and connect with each other. And I thought of her when I wanted to launch the Leading Lady series. I was like, okay, let's kick this off like once a quarter and talk to a lady. And I thought Tiffany is going to be the person. She's always been a good friend, but also a supporter. When I decided I wanted to get into my little business and things like that, she was like, well, let me know how I could support you. So she's always just been a strong, supportive person. And I know that when I've had that experience with her, it's not just me. I know there are other people who have probably had the same experience with her. And so that is why I chose her to kind of be the first one to break into this little series. So welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So I have a few questions. We're going to pick your brain, but this is going to be very conversational. And I want those of you who have joined us, who are here, if you have questions too, you can throw them into the chat. Because again, this is just a very informal gathering of people, talk about Tiffany's experience, and just kind of see what we can glean, what tidbits. But my first question for you is the obvious, right? What is your origin story in funeral service? How did you get here?
People ask me that from time to time, and they kind of assume that there's a certain situation or instance or story that happened to me that made me choose funeral service. Excuse me. But for me, overall, it was realizing that funeral service to me feels like volunteering, serving. But at the same time, you're also getting paid to do that. But ultimately, growing up throughout the years, my parents had us frequently volunteering in every and anything that we could in town, whether it was helping people, our community, animals, whatever have you. And that was very fulfilling to me in my life coming up throughout the years. And even as an adult, before I even entered the funeral service, I volunteered frequently at food banks, the pregnancy center, all of these things. And so really brought that sense of like a meaning to me to volunteer. It feels like I'm volunteering that fulfillment portion of it, but I'm helping families. I'm serving families, in their time of need. And really, I don't have a particular story that says, "Aha, this is somebody passed away," or whatever have you. Now, my mom, when we did move to Texas, I was 26 years old and I decided to go back to school, to college. And my mom is actually the one who mentioned mortuary science. Now, if you would have told me, even, at that time, you're going to be a funeral director, you're going to be a mortician, a dual licensed mortician, I probably would have said, "You're crazy." Like, what are you talking about? I never thought of being a mortician. And this may sound a little silly, but I had previously gone to college in my younger years to become a mechanic. And so I was doing very well in school, taking mechanic classes. I was one of the very few women in there. But, then I decided to move to New York and go figure out my life and the type of person that I wanted to be and how I was going to become that woman. And so, with that being said, when I finally settled down and moved back to California with my daughter, my parents moved to Texas. They asked me if I wanted to come and move with them, and I said yes. My dad was sick at the time, and I also was a caregiver for my dad. And so my mom said, "Why don't you consider mortuary science?" And living in Seguin is not too far from San Antonio. And so I looked into local mortuary schools, and lo and behold, that's what I discovered San Antonio College program there. And I applied and I got accepted, and the rest is history. I remember being very nervous to see my first decedent in school because they'd have the lab there and whatnot. But once I don't know, it felt comfortable to me. I am also an extremely hard worker. My parents both um, were examples of hardworking people. And I know I learned that from them. Also, they instilled that in me at a very young age. And I just ate it up. I just ate up the workload. I ate up, wanting to do more, be more, achieve more, move up in the ranks and that kind of thing. So I just believe my type of personality and then work ethic just really uh, ate it all up, and it propelled me to go forward and do even more.
Okay, and how long ago was this that you went to mortuary school and got your license?
Started in the fall of 2008. And my daughter was 5 years old at the time. And she's like, "What are you going to school for?" She didn't really understand it at the time when I explained it to her. But, going to mortuary school. And I quickly secured a job at a local funeral. As a matter of fact, when I met you, I was the manager at Palmer Mortuary under Legacy Funeral Group. And that's where I had my first job as an apprentice. But I just felt like I needed a different environment. So about 6 months later, I had quit, and then I had secured a job at Zeller Funeral Home in New Braunfels under SCI. And so I began school in the fall of 2008, and it did take me longer. And if this could be of an encouragement to whoever is a student watching the call with us today, it took me longer than the average person to graduate. I had several things going on in my personal life, my dad being sick. I was working full time at the funeral home, going to school full time, and I was a full time single mom, and I was a full time caregiver to my dad. And so at first,
A lot.
I was hard on myself. I should have passed that class, or why can't I, concentrate or remember things? And I was studying as hard as I could, but with just life happening at the same time and the responsibilities that I had, it was not easy. And I'll be upfront with you, it took me 3.5 years to finish school. I saw friends come and go, graduate, get jobs, or get their licenses. I did secure my funeral director's certificate first, and then I continued to work towards my dual licenseship. But it wasn't easy. So I want to encourage anyone that's listening and maybe they have life going on, and especially as a woman. when we take on these roles, whether it is an employee, a daughter, a wife, mother, and whatever have you, stay encouraged. I know you can do it. I know you can draw strength from somewhere, and don't forget to take care of yourself. I'm fortunate that I was younger at that time, 28, 29 years old, and I had more energy then. But it really, I sometimes share with folks, I never worked so hard in my life in my apprenticeship. I was the only female under four men, all dual license at that location. And they would help me, but they were not going to baby me or do it for me. And I didn't want them to, but at the same time, I still had to work double harder than anyone else to show them that I can do it. I can do this job. I can handle this job. I can move bodies. I can embalm too. That I could do all of the things that they were doing because I wanted to show them that I could do it, and I had an urgency to show and prove them wrong, because a lot of times um, people or men weren't taking me serious in the profession. And I recall clearly one time in my apprenticeship, I showed up to a call with one of the male directors. And in that area of Texas, there's a lot of rivers. And they had found what they call a floater. They had just tied him with a rope, but they did not get him out of the water. So they're like, okay, the director that I came with, he said, go ask the judge for all the paperwork and I'll see what we need to do. Okay. I'm in my, feminine suit clothes. And the JP was a woman. And she said, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm here to help retrieve this decedent. You? And I said, yes, me. Can I get the information? I don't know what you're going to do here. And she's rattling off. She gives me the paperwork. And I'm like thinking to myself, whatever, lady. So basically, we had to go down the embankment and continue to pull him up by the rope and then place him in a body bag and then pull the body bag up the embankment. And I said, well, I got to do what I got to do. I went down there. I mean, we were covered in mud and soaking wet and all of these things. But you still have to get the job done. I felt like I had to do it even more so, because even now a woman was even doubting me, was doubting my ability, was doubting my willingness to become a professional in the funeral business. And so after that, she called me about 2 days later and she apologized to me. She said, I saw you were working. I saw that you were serious. I saw that you didn't care what you were wearing. You didn't care if you got dirty. You did the job. And I told her, thank you. And after that, she was always very friendly to me. But it was and is still hard. It is still difficult for us women. And so I do my best to encourage other women. Just stay encouraged. If you really want to do this, you can do it. I'm only 5 feet tall, and some things are very difficult for me. I constantly am improvising or thinking of ways to get certain tasks done. My husband, as you know, is a mortician as well. And in the prep room, he tells me, like, will you let me grab that? Or can you ask me? And I'm like, no, because when you're not here, I have to figure it out on my own. I still have to do these things regardless if you're here or not. So sometimes I won't ask for help, but as I'm getting older, I'm like, okay, well, maybe you could you could do it for me. But yes, that's when I started mortuary school, and I was an apprentice at Palmer Mortuary, and then Zeller Funeral Home in New Braunfels, and then I had gotten my license, and then I finished up dual license a couple of years later.
I appreciate you sharing about the fact that it wasn't quick and that your process took what the time it took, because I often am telling my students that, sometimes life will interfere and they'll have to take a pause. And I always remind them the classes aren't going anywhere. And it's kind of like the story of if there's $1 million in Maine and all you have to do is get to Maine to get it. And there's enough for everybody, right? Whether you're the first person that gets to Maine or whether you get there a little later, if it's the reward is going to be the same. And I think it's very similar in terms of that. But you feel that pressure to, hurry up and get it done. And oftentimes too, it's because it impacts your income, right? The sooner you get licensed, the sooner you can potentially make more money, theoretically.
Or you may have an employer that's also putting pressure on you if you're working for corporate. When are you going to get your license? When you get your license, kind of thing. Another way that I encourage people that are a student that real life is happening to them. My dad passed away in my last semester of school. And it was very painful. I was extremely close with my dad. And at that point, I felt so exhausted. I thought to myself, I don't even care. I'm willing to throw everything away. It's so painful. It's so hard. I just don't care anymore. And then, of course, I, got myself together and I got back to my senses. And I also didn't want to walk the stage because my dad wasn't going to be there. And I remember one of my professors called me in and he asked me, why aren't you on the list to walk the stage? And I told him, I just feel a heaviness. I'm sad. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I just, felt overwhelmed with life. And he reminded me part of my reason of who I was doing all of this for. And that was for my daughter. And he told me, if you don't walk for anyone else, walk for your daughter so that she can see you doing that. And I said, okay, I guess he knew where, my soft spot were to get me. And I did walk, and I'm very thankful and grateful that he pulled me aside to have that conversation with me, because it was most definitely worth my time, worth it for my daughter to see me do that. And it did mean a lot to me for my, journey, my mortuary science schooling journey to just come to fruition 360 degrees, and that to know that I finally did it. I finished. I had my dad's picture in my cap and I walked the stage with him with me. So that was special and important to me.
Oh, I'm glad you made that choice because it also shows the reward of, it takes so much time. And there's often times where we have to say no to the things we'd rather be doing because we have to study or we have to do work. And your family, they support you by kind of giving you grace during that time, but you're missing things. And I feel like when you have that moment to celebrate it and they get to see that because they contributed to that. So I think it's special to walk the stage, even if you yourself are like, well, maybe it's not that important to just kind of walk it symbolizes a sacrifice because often it's not just you, it's the village, right, that surrounds you that helped get you to that point. So let me circle back when you talked about feeling like you had to do more and prove yourself because I have that same mentality. And one of the things I've discovered over time is I will default to that way of thinking. So even if I'm in a situation or environment where it's not necessary for me to do more or, turn down help because even if I don't have anything to prove, it's still a knee-jerk default reaction to feel compelled to do that. Do you ever find that that's the same thing for you where you have to remind yourself that I don't have to prove anything right now and it's okay to ask for help or it's okay to use the lift or the casket jack or whatever it is, right? So do you ever find yourself in that position?
Most certainly, especially as I'm getting older, uh, you know, moving caskets, moving bodies, moving whatever it is. I have to stretch a lot more. I try to stretch as much as I can, but I think maybe for us we have a little bit of PTSD from that, because I know you were in the thick of it. You've shared with me some of your journey in the past, being a lot of times the only female in the room.
Mhm.
A lot of times the only female manager in that whole area, being in trouble with your superiors because you're being a bitch, or why are you always fighting, or the things that they used to say to me, why do you always have to be a bitch? Well, because you don't take me serious. And then now I've got your attention. You know what I mean? Miss Bree's like, yes, shaking her head. And so, these kind of things, they just don't automatically go away. For me personally, I feel like coming up, starting in a corporate environment, certain things were drilled into your head. And so I felt like I had to be a certain way to be taken serious. I had to be a certain way. And, you know, sometimes, like I mentioned, I'm only 5 feet tall. Moving bodies is sometimes extremely difficult for me, regardless if I was younger or my age now. Most of my body would be on the table, just trying to pull a body over from the cot to the table. Or I'd have to climb the counter
Mhm.
to reach something way up high, or I had to, you know, whatever it is. And I think sometimes we just have a little bit of PTSD from that because those habits, they haven't really gone away. I still do those things, or I'll even be hard headed with my own husband. When he's like, let me help you in the prep room, let me do that. Just give me a minute. I'll be right there. And I'm like, no, I could do it myself. And so I just think for us, it's kind of hard to let go of those habits because it proved to us and to them that we could do the job. And it even brought us a little bit of comfort in some strange way because we were able to do those things. And then we can be satisfied in knowing, okay, I proved them wrong. They didn't see me fail. I didn't fail at my job. I got it done. I succeeded. I achieved what I had to do, those tasks for the day or for that time. So definitely it is a struggle. And then to top it off, I'm a Latina, so that's kind of hard. I don't like for anyone, not even my husband, to tell me what to do. But, you know, I just think it is okay. Of course, when you have coworkers or associates or colleagues that you trust and you've built a good rapport with, and you know that they are people that you feel safe around. Now sometimes we don't always have that in our work environment. Here at my own place, I have the ability to secure those kind of feelings, so I can ask for help more easily. However, if you're in an environment of maybe a corporate environment, I do know I still hear stories that aren't so pleasant about students working at places or doing their clinical time at places that they are still treated very poorly. So other folks in the profession may not have that opportunity to feel safe to do those things or perform those functions or ask somebody for help. And so that can be very hard for others. But I am still learning to delegate responsibility and to get things done because a lot of times I am a one woman show here at my place.
Well, I can definitely relate to that. So you were working at Palmer when I met you,
Yes, yes,
and then fast forward to now where you are a lady boss
yes.
with a funeral home with your last name on it.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that transition from working for someone else and managing their location to deciding it was time to manage your own. Because I think this is really important to share kind of what that experience was like, because I know there are women out there that are capable of doing something like that, but maybe they're afraid. And so I'm curious to hear what that process was like for you.
So I will definitely say that managing a funeral home is very different from owning your funeral home. And I'll be upfront about this part. I didn't realize that owning a funeral home was a part of a dream that I had for me. I've said in the past frequently, I don't ever want to own my own funeral home. It's going to control my life. I want to be able to go on vacation. I want to be able to, you know, whatever, fill in the blank. However, when the opportunity showed itself and my husband had shared with me that it was a part of his dream, I kind of, at first, I just kind of in my own mind said, okay, kind of thing like, okay, I'm listening. However, now that I have owned the funeral home for 3 years, I realize that it is my dream as well. And I'm thankful that he brought that dream into my life because it has been a tremendous undertaking, so to speak. Being a small business owner in a small town in East Texas has been a tremendous event in my life. It's been exciting and terrifying all at the same time. I am not from East Texas, and where we met is about 6 hours from here. Seguin is about 6 hours from here. And so I have learned so much about small business, about supporting local small business, about supporting women owned business, and about supporting minority owned business. Now, when I make choices of where I need to shop or buy certain things, I try to find out to the best of my ability. Am I supporting local? Am I supporting a minority? Am I supporting women owned business? Because I want somebody to patronize me. I want people to think about that before they choose a funeral home locally. I will also share with you that when I first came here, I had decided to name the funeral home Mount Vernon Memorial. But over time, I believed I started to feel that that was limiting me to just this area. It was limiting me as far as also letting folks know that we are family owned and operated. And so when I decided to change the name to Aguilar Funeral Services, the funeral home, because my business has always been Aguilar Funeral Services, contract labor services, embalming, whatever have you. But when I decided to put that same name on the funeral home, unfortunately, it came with a lot of repercussions. The community started to say, well, we only serve Mexicans. We only serve wetbacks and NIGGERs, hard R. We only, those people. Well, we will never choose your funeral home because of the name and things. Have you thought about changing the name of the funeral home? Well, maybe you need to go back to the other name. And these kind of things were happening to me. And they made it very clear. They made it very clear. They would tell me to my face. And I'll share with you, it's very painful. We hear about history, we've maybe read books or watched a movie where social injustice was presented and we feel emotional, we feel upset, we feel sad. But when it's happening to you in your face, that takes on a whole new meaning. It is extremely painful. And so, with that being said, um, I take a lot of pride in having my own business. I take a lot of pride in having a funeral home that's also beautiful, immaculately clean. I take a lot of pride in my experience and everything that I've learned throughout the years. I take a lot of pride in the connections that I have in the funeral profession. I take a lot of pride in helping any and anyone that will call on me or ask me, reach out to me, students, people that are already been licensed, whatever have you. And I also am extremely grateful for everyone that's called on me for contract services, all the way from Leroy Briones, Hillcrest, and Uvalde. Whoever calls on me, it's not a problem. You know, I'll go out and help whoever calls on me. Of course, only small funeral homes or independent funeral homes. I don't really help corporate funeral homes, but being called upon uh, to help others serve families through work in those circumstances means a lot to me. But owning my own funeral home overall, it has been a tremendous event in my life. And I'm proud for how far that I've come in the last 3 years. But it has definitely been a learning experience from forming my LLC to learning. We learn about these things in school, whether it's accounting, management, whatever have you. And when you work for corporate, a lot of those duties are taken off of you because they have the money to hire an office manager. They have home office who's also doing a lot of these tasks for you. But as I mentioned, a lot of times I'm a one woman show. So now I have to do these things. And so some of them have been um, a work in process, a work in progress of where I'm still learning how to run my own funeral home. But I'm very thankful and I'm very proud of how far I've come in the last 3 years as far as owning and managing my own funeral home. Earning trust from the community has been a really big deal for me because I'm not from here. So I get comments like, well, you're not from around here, and we don't take well to newcomers here. And so that's been difficult too, especially coming from South Central Texas, where folks were more diverse and more welcoming to me. It seemed a lot easier to be in the community and earn trust, versus here it's been a lot harder, a lot more difficult. And people will tell me, gosh, I see you everywhere on your Facebook page. You're just volunteering nonstop. You're here, you're there. And sometimes it just isn't enough. It isn't enough. So I've been doing all of the things that I was taught to do by corporate, that have deemed to and proven to be successful. Um, the algorithms, Facebook posts, volunteering, all of these things. However, here I've met more challenges than the ordinary. So I am working still, rigorously working extremely hard to continue to promote my business here in East Texas. And this is one other thing that a lot of folks don't understand. Um, Besides south of here, north, east, and west, I own the only Hispanic funeral home for hundreds of miles. And a lot of people don't realize that or understand it. And I mean hundreds of miles. There is no other Hispanic funeral home in north, west, and east of here. And so with that being said, it has been tremendous for me.
Wow. And you've been doing even before when you were with your funeral home in Seguin, you were, even while working for someone else, I know you were already differentiating yourself. Like a lot of the time, funeral homes with like their social media and what they're putting out is obituaries, right? It's constantly a stream of their obituaries. Or you get something that a company made for them, and then a few minutes later, the exact same thing will pop up with just a different funeral home name because they're not customizing the advertising or the promotional material, right? But you, on the other hand, were showing when there was local sport events, when there was fundraising for a school or whatever it was. And so you were supporting your other businesses and your community very actively and creating a relationship beyond just call me when someone dies. And I think that's really important too. I think a lot of funeral homes, it's like they don't make that introduction to a family or to their communities, and they sit and they wait until they're necessary, and then at that point they're a stranger still. And I think one of the ways that you have always really outshone others in that way is that you have been friendly right out of the gate, and you've been approachable, and you've made your business a part of a community versus just kind of a necessary call me when someone dies situation. And there's an authenticity there that I think a firm of any size could learn from. And it's obvious that you mean it. You know what I mean? You're not just going through the motions. And I think that's really admirable to see that.
Yes, that's something that I still strive to do even now with my own funeral home. I hated to see like funeral homes that were owned by the same company. Like you mentioned, yours comes out and then you see three others with the same post. And I would get in trouble frequently for going kind of rogue and posting my own thing, but I just wanted to have some personality. I wanted it to have some type of individualization so that people can differentiate. Well, if your stuff looks just like theirs, then what's the difference? There's a huge difference. I'm the difference. And so I want people to see that. I want people to see that there's personality here. I want people to see that it's not always just sad organ music and drabness here. I want people to see that the funeral home is inviting, that the funeral home, that we do laugh and have a good time here. Our staff has a great time here. And so, and of course, when it's time to work, it's time to work. We get very serious because we're serving a family and honoring their loved one. But outside of that, this isn't a sad place to work. It's very often that I have a playlist or whatever music on my big screen in the chapel. I'll put a movie on and just let it play, or I'll put scenes from like the ocean or whatever have you, lo-fi, music playing, or I just have a playlist that I like to play. It has Elton John and Nat King Cole and just, a mix of all kinds of things. And I also love that my funeral home people walk in. One of the greatest compliments that we receive, and they mentioned to me, this doesn't feel like a funeral home. It feels like I'm in somebody's house, and it's very inviting and kind of warm. And I love that. I love when people say that to me, because I even go into some firms and I feel uptight, or I feel kind of stale, or I feel like I can't all the way relax because they are outdated, or they're very dirty, or there's just an atmosphere of uncomfortableness or being stiff because people don't necessarily know how to always carry themselves in the funeral home, or even some other funeral directors that I come across. They're just kind of, a little bit uptight kind of thing, and that's okay for them. But I want people to see that I'm a normal person that just happens to care about you, and I happen to be licensed to care for your loved one. Sometimes I'll come to the funeral home not in a suit. I have my suits here in a closet. I have several suits in a closet that I have here with quite a bit of clothing and shoes, but I'll come to the funeral home dressed in a cute top, some nice jeans, and maybe a wedge sandal or something. I'll come to the funeral home with my shirt with my logo on it, and maybe, some wind shorts and some sneakers. I'll come to the funeral home. I want people to see that I'm a regular person. I want people to see that I sometimes look just like you. I want people to see that, it doesn't have to be so serious. I don't have to be so serious all the time. And for people to see that I'm a regular, normal person. When I first got here to town, people were saying that I was too fancy because I was dressed up all the time. Or sometimes, depending on the demographic that you serve, wearing a suit may sometimes make them feel uncomfortable a little bit. And so I want to remain mindful of that. But overall, I do want folks to see that, this is something different that I'm doing here. This funeral home is different from any other funeral home in this area. This funeral home has something that no one else is providing, and that's a certain warmth and atmosphere for people to come and grieve.
And circling back, we talked about people not wanting to do business with you potentially because they had labeled you as basically serving minorities. And I think that if people understood, I think your standards, because I know you, your standards are higher than they would probably find in a lot of the more familiar to them funeral homes. I'll put it that way.
Yes.
And the cultural awareness, because I will say in my career, I've had the advantage of serving a variety of races, ethnicities, religions, and cultural awareness and knowledge of at least even just surface level expectations of when you're caring for a specific type of group of people. And I know not no two people are identical. However, there are certain things that are unique to certain populations. And the fact that you have that knowledge
Yes.
and you're the only one within your area, that blows my mind that because I would bring a family member to you any day of the week over certain other people, other firms that, aren't necessarily run by a minority, because you're like me, you like things done a specific way
Yes.
and you're not going to bend and alter or in any way take that standard down. You're not going to compromise that because and sometimes it's hard to work for other people when they don't understand that or when their own standard is below yours. And that's where that label of being a bitch comes in, right? Why are you so picky? Why do you have to have it this way? Why can't you just do this instead, right? Why are you worrying about this over here? And so I can't imagine someone not wanting your funeral home to take care of them, just knowing the quality of service. And their ignorance is unfortunate, and it's going to limit them in the long run. And and that's crazy too that and I guess now so much, not so much, but it's crazy that that type of like thinking is still prevalent, and then the audacity to actually talk to you about it as if it's an acceptable thing to say, and like it's a as if it's a mindset that is normal. Like that blows my mind, and I can't imagine what you must have been thinking. And I know that you probably held your composure and took it, but I applaud you for that, because that is hurtful, and I can't even fathom having people say that negative things to you like that.
Yes, I have many times wanted to uh, say something, but I haven't because number one, there are things that I would like to say. Now, should I say them? Probably not. But I also if I do ever approach it or say anything about it, I want to, remain with wisdom, with professionalism, and with tactfulness. And I have to be very careful on the things that I do say here because I'm still not highly trusted in the community. And if that's the sense that the majority census here, I mean, it's very easy for people to say, well, that's not true, and we don't believe that, and whatever have you. So it has been hard, and I'll be honest with you. And as a woman, we're having an honest conversation. There's been many times when I've come home in tears. There's been many times where I have just felt so frustrated because of the way people have treated me here. I'm doing a lot better with it now than I was even like 6 months ago to a year ago because I was taking it very personal. I was taking it very personal, and it's hard not to at times, right? But I was taking it very personal. And so when I decided to not take it so personal, I decided to pick and choose my battles. I decided to concentrate and worry on me and the things that I'm doing and put my focus elsewhere instead of the comments. That's when I realized that I really let a lot of that go. And it still bothers me. It's still painful. It still frustrates me. But the focus is no longer on the comments. The focus is no longer on the ignorance. The focus is 110% now on me and what I'm doing. And so I'm learning to manage that better. And I'm really proud of myself for that because, like I said, 6 months to even a year ago, I can't say that I could have said that. But I am proud of me for choosing me. I am proud of me for also, um, you know, choosing to remain quiet about it just in general. Because I don't believe that by giving that energy right now, maybe later on I'll be at a place in my life to address it. But right now, that's just not the thing for me. I'm also extremely fortunate to have a husband that's in the funeral profession, that's been around for a long time, and that I can lean on him for support. He understands a lot of the things that I'm going through, or for him just to listen. He's a very good listener. And he constantly is doing his best to elevate me, encourage me, be there for me, or allow me to feel as independent as I need to be, and be my hype man and cheer me on and whatever have you. He's always like, you can do it. You can do it. I know you can do it. And that is a tremendous thing for me because I don't think without his support, I don't know if I would be able to move forward and do all the things that I have been doing up to this point. So I'm very fortunate for that. But like I said, even in my own life, I'm still learning though certain things on being a small business owner. And so learning, growing, elevating, and all of these things, I never want to stop doing that. I never want to stop learning. I never want to stop. And that's why I enter for the scholarships. I had gotten the scholarship for the NFDA for the Funeral Service Foundation, and I was really happy for that. And I did not take that lightly, and so I'm proud that I was able to take advantage of that and just keep learning, keep growing, keep doing, keep all of these things. So
Good
definitely.
stuff. So I'm going to give you one more hard question, and then I want to leave time for us to have some Q&A with the attendees. And I know Lisa put some great information in the chat for you as well. But I'm going to ask you one more hard one.
Okay.
And I want you to think about the future of funeral service. And I want you to imagine what it will look like. And I want you to describe that for us. What do you perceive the future of funeral service to look like?
That's a great question. I believe the future of funeral service, I would like to say that it would be more open, more understanding, more accepting, more open-minded. However, at times, I don't necessarily see that projection. I believe the future of funeral service, that there's going to be certain folks who are going to make it and survive and be there, and then there's not. I also believe that certain the generations coming up, yes, they want to change and shift funeral service, and there's a place for them. But I believe that certain things are going to begin to highly fade out because some of our folks that are coming up, they just don't understand the work, the amount of work that it requires. And I'm not talking about an age group. I'm talking about just certain people don't understand the work that it requires. They don't understand the patience that it requires either. I've had many apprentices or people say, I want to be in the funeral profession, walk through my doors, whether it was here or somewhere else. And it's been all ages. They just don't want to understand or have the patience or time to put in the work. And that concerns me. You cannot be in a rush to embalm a body. You can, and I get it. You, depending on where you are, you have a workflow, you got to get things done. But you cannot say, well, I've got to go take care of all of these things. And I get it. I know what having a family is about. I'm a wife, a mother, all of these things. I get it. But a lot of, depending on what your position is at the funeral, I think people need to also decide where they want to go in the funeral profession. Do you want to be somebody that's in charge with a lot of responsibility? Or do you want to be a director that has every other weekend off, whatever have you? Do you want to be an owner? I'm at the funeral home every day. Somebody asked me the other day, are you at the funeral home every day? And I said, yes, especially if I have families to serve, especially yes. I mean, that's just what it requires. That's what it takes. And so I believe that the funeral profession is going to start changing substantially. And there's going to be folks like generations, like my generation, who I'll work all day, all night until I get the things done that I need to do, right? And then we have younger generations coming up that they want to have time off. I would like to have time off too, but being an owner, whatever have you, I can't just say, well, I'm going to schedule this weekend off and I can go and then there's someone else to cover for me. A lot of times I'm a one woman show. And so I don't always have that luxury to say, well, I'm going to Galveston for the weekend, see you later kind of thing. But with that being said, I do believe that the funeral profession, the future of it, is going to be innovative. I would like to see things for us to work smarter and not harder kind of thing. Maybe, I know with AI, a lot of the marketing companies are generating things through AI or like obituaries through AI or whatever have you. But I would especially like to see things as far as embalming is concerned, more inventions created for us to work smarter and not harder, more things for us to take advantage of, for people just really thinking outside of the box. Like I'm always thinking of things and I'm always sharing with my husband because he is a Dodge rep. Like tell Dodge to create this or let's create whatever have you. And he laughs at me because he knows I'm serious. But I'm always thinking of things like how could we make our job easier? How could we be innovative even for us women? And I know that there are some short men out there, but I'm advocating for us shorties that are ladies. I'm like, what can I build to walk around the embalming table so that I'm raised up, so I'm elevated up, so I can reach these bodies easier? Because it is hard,
Mm-hmm.
Or like my dream is to invent an embalmer bra, an embalming bra. But anyways, the future of funeral, I would just like to see it be more open-minded. I would like to see it be more welcoming, more inviting, more protective of people, in the past, unfortunately, I've had things happen to me that were not so very pleasant, like sexual harassment at association events. I would like to see us be more protective, regardless if it's of male or women that are being harassed. I would like to see things that really have a deeper meaning, things that have been happening for years, but people are afraid to speak up. I remember when I was coming up as an apprentice, well, you don't want to offend so and so, or you don't want to say this, or you don't want to do that because you'll get blackballed. And I remember like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be blackballed. But then I see assholes that are still in the profession now. How come they're not blackballed? Right? And so
Hmm.
I said, how about we really start protecting the people who need it? How about we really start? Why can't we see that in the future of funeral? I've been asking for years for the Texas Funeral Directors Association, what is our protocol for when somebody's harassed at our own association events? Nobody has had an answer for me for years. So why don't we start? Why I would love to see the future of funeral start protecting the people who really need to be protected, and that's the people who pay our dues, who pay our license fees, who have paid for schooling, who've passed our exams, who have done all of those things. Let's protect the people that really matter, the people that we should care about.
That is fantastic. And when you talk about that, thank you, and thank you for being honest.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times, we see things and we don't talk about it, but we all know it's there. And I will tell you that I went to the Professional Women's Conference last year,
Yes.
and it was a fantastic event. It was the first time I'd ever gone. And I had been in the past to like large national events and things like that. But one of the things that struck me about the Professional Women's Conference that I didn't realize until I was there was how relaxed I felt and how I didn't think as much about my clothing choices
Mm-hmm.
as I might have otherwise. And I didn't have to hug anyone that I was not comfortable hugging who would just come at you into your space, right? Or I didn't have to worry about if I'm walking around with my colleague who looks like a Greek goddess, having her eyeballed like a ham sandwich walking through a homeless camp or something. And these are real things. People take liberties and they touch you, and they don't think about it because it's they're doing it for. And people are different. I'm not, believe it or not, I'm not a big hugger. Like if I hug you, it's because like I'm comfortable to a point. It makes me uncomfortable hugging people a lot. And when I worked for Wilbur, that was a struggle for me, was because oh, and I would hear, oh, well, you're in the South, so we hug here, so you're going to hug me type things. And you would tolerate things because of a power imbalance. And that is very much a problem when you have to mind how you respond to things because it's going to impact potentially your income, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it creates just a lot of uncomfortable things. But I will tell you that after I went to that professional women's conference, there was a certain feeling that I recognized that I was in a place where it was safe, where I could be comfortable, where I could have the conversations because people would understand, and where I didn't have to worry about what I had chosen to wear, or if your friend over there drinks too much, is she going to be potentially in danger, right? At the event afterwards type stuff. And I think that those are if every event could feel like that, I think that's eventually where it would be nice to get to. And it may not be, quite honestly, in our lifetime. And I've had to accept that. It's been hard for me because I've seen this for so long in different ways, in different places. And I'm like, why is it still like this? And it is still like this. Like we can pretend it isn't or not talk about it. It is still like this. And we can't have candid conversations. But I think it's going to have to be one of those things that just gradually, and I'm hoping with time and fresh, perspectives, new entrants, that we can potentially get there. So I appreciate you talking about those things. So Lisa has to go. Thank you so much for coming, Lisa. I love her. She's fantastic.
Yeah.
She put some fantastic information in the chat for you, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Um, and Natalie has to run. And Natalie said that also, as a Latina woman about to start her career, that your story was very inspiring to her. So she appreciated that very much. Lisa had some really great suggestions for you to consider in terms of how you're marketing yourself a little bit. And she has some suggestions. Lisa's a powerhouse lady boss herself. I have
Oh,
a lot of respect for her, and um, her story is pretty impressive as well. But and you are able to see the chat, right?
I'm looking
Are you
right.
able to?
Let me see. Oh,
Okay, yeah, but
I'm
she
not
has
sure how to
great
see the
advice.
chat.
If not,
I'm not
I'll
sure how to see
send
the
it to you.
chat.
That's okay. I can send it to you. But she has some really great input and advice as well. Basically, how to utilize your strengths in a broader way to potentially get you some added attention, I think is what the point was with that. But let me see, because if we're live over here on Facebook, I'll see if there's any questions that came in for you. For our folks that are here, Bree, did you have any questions for Tiffany or anything you wanted to say?
No, I actually been following Tiffany for a while because I actually got licensed in Texas. So and then her husband was actually my rep for one for a couple of locations I was running in the Houston area. So when I saw the name and she said her husband for Dodge, I was like, oh, I knew that name looked familiar. So yes, ma'am, but I don't have anything, just a definitely an inspiring story for sure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Much love.
Yeah, Chris is actually, he's my Dodge Rev also. And he came to the college and he gifted one of our students with a little embalming kit. And I have one too. I made a reel about it because I was so excited, like a nerd, like the nerd that I am. But yeah, so I feel like Chris has been a Dodge rep for like 100 years, right? He really has. But yeah, so I appreciate the fact that you all are supportive of our college and that he came and gave, like I said, gave that cool little embalming kit. And I'm always bothering him for things. So I appreciate that as well. But yeah, so I guess that we will wrap this up. But I want to thank you for your time. And I know you're a busy lady boss, and I appreciate your willingness to go on camera and have these conversations and be so honest and open. And before we go, Tiffany, can you talk a little bit about where your business is located and how folks can find you?
Yes, my funeral home website is aguilarfuneralservices.com. And of course, we are also on Facebook, Aguilar Funeral Services. Give us a like. Being a small business owner, I would really appreciate that. We have photos, of course, of our location on our website. We are located in far northeast Texas, in Mount Vernon, Texas, about 2 hours northeast of Dallas, off of I-30 going towards Texarkana. And we're only about 20 minutes from NTCC, which is something I did not know before I came here. But we're just down the road from the college here in Mount Pleasant. So that's kind of neat. Yes. So once again, it's aguilarfuneralservices.com or Aguilar Funeral Services on Facebook. And so give us a like, look us up. We have a beautiful location. Our staff is on there. And of course, any type of shares or likes to our Facebook page would be greatly appreciated, being a small business owner.
Okay, and can you also share, you said that you do coverage for other independent firms in your area that need licensee assistance. Can you talk a little bit about what your area of coverage might be and what type of services you guys can help other funeral directors and embalmers with?
Yes, so of course, Aguilar Funeral Services, I call it competent contract labor services for the funeral profession. I offer embalming. I embalm mostly for the smaller firms around here in the Northeast Texas area. But of course, I also will help in do like weekend coverage or taking out services. And like I said, I have gone to like Corpus, Uvalde, whatever have you, but we're pretty much available throughout the whole state, mostly here in East Texas, of course, because it's a little bit closer. But if we are called on, if I'm called on, we pretty much go through the whole state.
All right. Well, excellent. So, ladies, gents, and viewers, that was our first Leading Ladies
Yeah.
series kickoff with the wonderful Tiffany Aguilar. So
Thank
check out her site, check out her funeral home, and if you are in charge of a funeral home or work in one and you find that you need coverage, they are the ones that I would definitely trust her and her family to help you out for sure. If your staff needs a break, even if you're not short staffed, but maybe you just want to give your staff a little bit of a break, reach out to them and see if you're able to get some coverage and just kind of spread out the love there. But yes, so thank you so much, Tiffany, for your
thank
candor
you.
and for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bree, for joining us. We appreciate you, ma'am. Thank you to Chris, the Dodge rep, the Mister of Mrs. Aguilar, right?
Yeah. Thank you
Yes.
for
Thank
having
you all so much. Yes, thank you. And with that, I bid you all a great rest of your day. Thank you so much. Bye.
me.